So I'm here at the end of the dry season at our property where we've been doing a lot of work just planting things going into the rainy season and prepping all the spaces for that. And so I just want to give a little tour of what we've got going on. So we're in the process of building a roof extension and a little concrete floor on the outside of the house that's going to be our outdoor kitchen. So the area around the house is a bit of a construction site right now. But here we've got a couple things planted. We planted these guanabana trees right on the side of this pathway, a little bit spaced out. So everything we planted, we wanted to give a bit of mulch and just some log barriers so that we can chop around them when it gets overgrown and still know where everything's at. In this area, we cleared it off and we actually planted a grass seed. We're planning to string up some shade cloth around here and do a little nursery space. So we'll see if that grass fills in and use this space as a little area to grow some baby trees. It's lined by a lot of lemongrass here, pineapples, and then we cut up all this chaya from these original plants. Dropped a bunch of cuttings in the ground, so hopefully those will all take and sprout up and kind of bush out. Chaya is a really great tree spinach. And we kind of just continued this pattern of pineapples and then vetiver along this edge to stabilize this hillside. There's this compost pile under here that we've been using to amend the soil in all of our baby trees. And then there's this garden. So we chopped everything back recently to use all that leaf mulch. So this is a big row of lemongrass and we just cut it low to mulch these beds with. They were growing pigeon peas. I left a couple in the ground just to turn into trees and give a bit of shade. But in here we planted turmeric all down this bed, and this bed's already got some yucca growing. So we just left that in there. We lined this area with 2 rows of lemongrass. This is the more culinary type of lemongrass, and it's a little bit different than this, which is sometimes called Indian lemongrass. Very hardy and strong root balls. So we like both. And then we pruned back this Madera Negro and just dropped that on the ground. And in this area, we planted some various nitrogen fixing seeds. We planted a ton of pigeon peas and crotalaria, also known as sun hemp, which is a nice flowering little nitrogen fixing chop and drop that will sprout up and we'll be able to allow it to fix nitrogen before just chopping it down and using it as mulch. Pigeon peas grow really fast and are very hardy, so we grew some more of those. Maybe you get a harvest of the beans before we chop those down. And then on this outside edge, on the other side of the lemongrass, actually, we just planted some pumpkin seeds. So see if those take off and kind of fill in this area by the road and grow some pumpkins. They might get smashed by car tires, but so we've got this little bed here that just had I put a couple of pineapples in at one point. They're this nice variety of white pineapple. So looking forward to tasting those. And then this part of the bed's got a bunch of ginger. There's a little bit sprouted up left from last season, but it's all freshly planted with different chunks of ginger. So we'll have more of that. And then in this area, we actually seeded a bunch of papaya seeds. So we're hoping to just get a bunch of little seedlings sprouting up and come back to be able to dig up a few and place them all over the place. Just plant more papaya trees on the property. This area we just kind of cleared off and I sprinkled in some pigeon pea seeds. Those I just like planting everywhere because they grow really fast, produce a bunch of biomass, a tasty bean, and they fix nitrogen. So I'm just putting them in all over. This little canal area we want to build out, maybe do a little trench and some rocks and slow the water down and eventually build swales down below. But for now we just planted some malanga in it, so that'll sprout up. It's a root crop and it'll sprout up from the roots we planted and just fill in this kind of area and hopefully slow the water down a little, make this a nice moist area and fill it in with some vegetation as well as a delicious edible crop. I put some galangal in here lining the pathway, which is a ginger relative used in a lot of Vietnamese cooking that grows really high. And then up here we've got the pineapples that I planted a long time ago. They're still growing nicely. None have really started to produce fruit yet, but they are growing and happy to be receiving some rain recently. Got mulberries in between them. These are all Pakistani mulberries that I brought cuttings of from the States. So those are still growing as well, and eventually will provide a little shade for these pineapples. Some biomass right here. This is a citronella clump grass. So we've got one of those at the end of each of these rows, and eventually I'll probably split these up and stick them all over the place just as we do with all our clump grasses around here. Got a few coconuts planted to continue this line. So there's 2 bigger ones there, this one, And this one, which looked like it died, but it's starting to come back. Following down this way, we've got some jocote posts with dragon fruit growing up it. A lot of them seem to have died. We'll see if they come back, the dragon fruit that is. Then this little baby cinnamon tree. And then this is a space that I've been using kind of like an in-ground nursery. So we had all these avocado trees growing in it. Obviously they can't stay that close together. So I dug up a few and planted them over by the other side of the house. And then I stuck in a few little bare root trees I had. So these are canistel, or egg fruit, zapote amarillo. And I have these in the ground now where the avocados I moved were. So we'll see if those take, and then eventually I would dig those up too and move them around. I'll probably leave about 3 of these avocados, the ones that are spaced out enough. So that's a really healthy one. I want to just leave it in the ground and not mess with it and let it grow big and tall there. And then maybe I'll leave this one and one on the end there so they have a bit of adequate spacing between them. But yeah, heading back towards the house, I'll show you what's going on in the front area. So here we have a lot of freshly cut encino branches. We cut some branches off of this tree that was kind of hanging over the house and just chopped up all the branches to mulch this area really well. Piled up some of the bigger wood right there, and we'll use that later. But right here we've got this banana circle that we dug last dry season, and it's all planted now with some dwarf banana varieties. These bananas stay really low and do well in the wind, which is why I wanted them here. We planted some Mexican sunflower cuttings all between them, so you can see this one's taken and is starting to sprout some new growth. Just planted them all around. Another great biomass species. There it is, growing really tall. You can see it alongside that sugar cane. But so there's bananas on here. We also planted just pumpkin seeds and pigeon peas in this banana circle, just to get more biomass, more plants that we like growing, and see what works well. So then there's this herb bed, which is a hugel bed that we made last dry season as well. Piled up a lot of old rotten logs and covered it with soil from the banana circles. And then I brought a lot of these different herb plants up from a friend's property and planted them. So this is an oregano bush. I think it's Greek oregano that does really well in this climate. It's growing pretty prolifically alongside this little comfrey. And then there's this sweet mint that's a really nice herb. And behind that is wild daga, which is like a cannabis alternative people like to smoke for various effects. And then there's this tulsi, or holy basil, that's starting to bush out. I plugged in a bunch of gotu kola, which is a really nice medicinal herb that you can also eat like a salad green. So I like to just eat it raw once there's plenty of it, and that'll spread out and kind of act as a ground cover in this bed. Then over here we have this rosa de jamaica, or hibiscus, some culinary lemongrass right there, and then I lined the whole bed with vetiver. So there's vetiver now all along this back edge and the sides that'll bush out and kind of further establish and maintain this bed as the rains come and weeds start to really grow. And then there's this Mexican oregano too, and some more gotu kola just planted all throughout this little bed. So it'll be cool to see this really take off and fill in with delicious and medicinal herbs. Next to this arrowroot here, filling in this space next to the shower. So we plugged in a bunch more of this plant. I don't know the name of it. I just call it the purple spiky plant, kind of an ornamental, and it grows really well here. So we just put it in all over the place to kind of fill in this area and hopefully have it bush out alongside a bunch of cool ornamental plants. So we've got that coleus and the lengua de suegra snake plant and this plumeria, and then I stuck in a hat palm right here. So this is a nice bush palm, or toquilla palm. So hopefully those will kind of grow up around these rocks and around the shower, and then we'll build walls and make this a really nice atmosphere to shower in. There's a mulberry right here that's growing really well. Put some compost on it that we made, and yeah, you can really tell the difference using some homemade fertilizer like that. This has really healthy foliage and is growing pretty rapidly. So I just put a tire around that so that when we're chopping during the rainy season, we don't actually accidentally hit it down. Same thing with this curry plant that I brought up from the Caribbean side. This is a really great plant. The leaves you can blend into a powder, and it's basically curry powder. So I planted that here and mulched it, and hopefully it'll grow tall in front of the house, kind of be a nice kitchen herb as well. And then we've got this other banana circle, which is also functioning as our compost pit. So we throw our food scraps in there and then cover it with foliage or dead leaves, branches, whatever's around, just to kind of create a lazy compost pile and a source of nutrients for our bananas as they're growing. So you can see a couple have sprouted up. We've got this whole bed lined with bananas, as well as Mexican sunflower, pumpkin seeds, and pigeon peas as well. You can see these pigeon peas are actually already starting to sprout up, so that'll just provide a bit more biomass and nitrogen for the soil where the bananas are growing. We've got this achote tree. It's growing pretty nicely in this funky little chamber, and just some lemongrass planted here, establishing a bit of a border to this space. Yeah, I planted a few different ornamental species in here, just little cuttings that you can't really see, so we'll see if any of that takes. And then some more plumeria along this edge, which is a really pretty plant that kind of grows tall and has these nice white flowers to look at. We started using our compost toilet, so there the San Pedro has found a nice home right here, and we have been building the walls out a bit more, so using some pine alongside this pochote to create a nice edge. We want to actually use like laurel or more pine for slats to kind of create a slotted window for this space, but right now it's working well. It's pretty simple. We've got the sawdust in this bucket here, and you just use 2 scoops of that each time you poop, and it goes down into the one chamber. As soon as that's full, we'll close it off and move the toilet over to this chamber and start using that as we let the humanure break down in this one. Eventually we can pull it out and mulch baby fruit trees with it, use it as a fertilizer in the garden. So here's another look at the roof extension we're building and the house, which I'm just packing everything up right now as I'm getting ready to leave. And then we've got this kind of ornamental garden in front of the bathroom. So we have more of that snake plant and this ornamental ginger, some aloe vera, and this plant they call life everlasting. It's an herb that does well in the water, so we just planted some cuttings and hopefully we'll see that bush out, as well as more of this spiky purple plant and some hat palms there too. So there's 1 and 2, which will hopefully grow tall and bush out as the rains come. On this edge, which is getting attacked right now because of the construction, we've got actually a pomegranate tree right here. I'm not sure if it's gonna make it. This one has dropped all of its leaves several times, and I think it might be getting too much moisture actually. But there's this papaya here that seems a bit happier, and another pomegranate tree that's really leafing out. So I think of both of our pomegranate trees that lost their leaves, this one's maybe gonna be the one that comes back. Got more Mexican sunflower in here in a line on this edge, 2 guanabana trees. They tend to do great in this climate, so we'll hopefully see those get a bit of new growth this rainy season. Got some coconuts lining the road on this side as well, and then the avocados that I took from that kind of in-ground nursery I was showing earlier ended up here. So now they're growing here in these piles that are heavily mulched with just grass from around here, and I used some compost that we'd made when planting these, and now they've got a bit more space in this area to grow. So hopefully we'll see this all really fill in and have a lot of the plants we want to see growing here by the time we come back. The way we've approached this property, working in the United States a lot of the time, we have to come and go. So everything we're doing is planning for us being gone. So, you know, every time we plant something, we want to make sure it's got the best start possible and that it won't need us. And so we use a lot of mulch, we use nice compost, water it in really well, and then just leave and cross our fingers and kind of see what works. We're using a lot of species that don't need a lot of excess water so that we can get biomass growing here. We're planting our water. You know, we're doing things that don't take a huge toll on the water system here, our solar, any resources that we'd need to bring in from outside. We're just trying to kind of start it all here. So it starts off slowly, but we've seen this time as our gardens really start to fill in that our efforts are working. The more biomass we plant, the more we're able to use as chop and drop mulch, and the more seeds we're able to collect and keep planting. So it's been really cool this time to see our efforts kind of start to pay off. We've been harvesting more food that we've been growing and eating more from the garden, so looking forward to more of that.